online Bible study, whether you're tuning in at Twitter or Periscope at Bible Study Cam, whether you're on Facebook.com/Reflective Bible Study, or whether you're on YouTube at The Online Preacher, or even at theonlinepreacher.com/live, wherever you happen to be tuning in, whether you're watching this live or on replay, whether you're watching this at one of those places or somewhere else, welcome to this morning's online Bible study, and I'm glad that you're here with us. And this morning, we're going to be looking, this is kind of a part 3, we're going to be looking at the last section of the introduction to Jesus's slightly less famous Sermon on the Plain. And 2 mornings ago, we focused in on what was happening just before Jesus started this sermon. And then yesterday morning, we focused in on the first little part of the sermon, which almost reflects in a way the beginning of Jesus' more famous Sermon on the Mount. But this morning, Jesus shifts the focus of this less famous sermon and includes some challenges to offset the blessings that we looked at yesterday. So with that said, let's read this passage. Let's start from the beginning of the passage and read from there to give us context for when Jesus then shifts to focus in on the challenges. So this is Luke chapter 6, starting in verse 17, reading from the New American Standard Bible. Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place, and there was a large crowd of his disciples, and a great throng of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were being cured. And all the people were trying to touch him, for power was coming from him and healing them all. That's the part of the passage we focused in on 2 mornings ago. Verse 20, and turning his gaze toward his disciples, he began to say, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when men hate you and ostracize you and insult you and scorn your name as evil for the sake of the Son of Man. Be glad in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way, their fathers used to treat the prophets." That's the big idea, the big challenge, you could say, that we looked at yesterday morning. But then here, starting in verse 24, Jesus shifts the tone. "But woe to you who are rich, for you are receiving your comfort in full. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for their fathers used to treat the false prophets in the same way." Now that last one, that last little section is interesting. Because on one hand, we have this 2 ideas that's at war, or at present here, these 2 competing ideas that if you are doing well, if you are satisfied, if you are well fed, if you are rich, if you're laughing now, if you're enjoying life, Jesus challenges you that might change in an instant. But it's also interesting because Jesus, in the part of the passage we focused in on yesterday, helps encourage those who are facing hard times by challenging them, or encouraging them, you could say. Don't give up hope, because while things might be bad now, they will get better. They will get better at the very least, if things are bad now, because you chose to be a follower of Jesus. If things are bad now because you have allied and aligned yourself with Jesus, then at the very least, you have a reward waiting for you in heaven. But what's fascinating is verse 26. "Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for their fathers used to treat the false prophets in the same way." This means that if you're doing things simply to get people to like you, or to get people to click like on your videos, or give you handshakes and applause and just greetings and just people to think well of you, you might be stepping into risky territory, territory that Jesus would call false prophets. And the false prophets were those prophets who were focused in on themselves and who ultimately didn't get to share God's message, and whatever they prophesied didn't happen. Or if they prophesied something wouldn't happen, then it did. And God dislikes false prophets. He dislikes people claiming to speak for him, claiming to come in his name, who are more interested in building themselves up. But it's interesting, I want to take a step back, and I want to share an illustration I heard a number of years ago. I don't remember where I heard this illustration, but it's fascinating, and it draws a huge, it kind of ties a bow on this teaching, especially for just the average person, somebody who might not be interested in being a prophet speaking for God or standing up and speaking for God, but maybe somebody who is either facing hard times or somebody who might be growing content or complacent in well times. And this illustration goes that there was a king who was at the height of his fame. This king had everything, but this king also remembered that he had a very humble, a very low upbringing, and things weren't always easy. And he knew that in those times when it wasn't easy, he had almost given up hope. But he also knew that if he were to get too complacent, if things were to go well for too much time, then he could grow complacent, and then when things grew complacent, as he had looked around at other people who had faced similar circumstances, he knew that disaster would come and strike. And so he sent a message throughout his kingdom, issuing a challenge. He wanted a statement, one single statement, that could help put everything into perspective. Whether the time that the situation he was in was really good, help it put it into perspective to realize that things might not always be that good. But at the same time, this single statement, when things were going bad, could also encourage and help him not lose hope. And so he sent this challenge out, one statement that could help bring him down if he was getting a little too high, or help bring him up if he was getting a little bit too low. And person after person came and shared statements, and none of them sounded right until one man, an old elderly man, kind of hobbled his way into the king's palace. And this man told the king, I have a phrase for you that will help you if you are at a low point and feeling like you should give up. And this phrase will also help bring you back into focus, bring the perspective back into your focus if you are doing a little bit too well and at risk of becoming complacent. Well, what is this phrase? The king asked him. The phrase you should remember is that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And that is the big idea, the big theme that I see Jesus sharing in this passage. That when times are tough, when times are challenging, when you are facing trials in your life, especially trials that come into your life because of your allegiance to God. When things come into your life, remember that this too shall pass. Because Jesus is preparing a place for you in heaven. But then also remember, woe to you who are rich, for you are receiving your comfort in full. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn. Woe to you when you have all the fame and glory and men speak well of you. because this too shall pass. And that is an powerful, whenever I read this parable, or I guess this isn't a parable, whenever I read this set of encouragements as well as woes or challenges, I remember the illustration of the king and the phrase, this too shall pass, because it works in our lives today. Whether you're doing great and you're actually in a better place after this whole pandemic craziness is coming to a close, if you end up in a better place, congratulations. But remember that this too shall pass. But if you are in a much, much lower place, if things are much, much worse for you when this craziness is done, then also remember that this too shall pass. And above everything else, choose to ally and align yourself with Jesus. Because when this sin-filled, crazy world, with all of its social distancing and social isolating and pain and disease and death, ends, when all of this world that we know it ends, those who have aligned and allied themselves with Jesus have a future in heaven. And while life in this world for followers of Jesus might not be pleasant, let's together remember that this sin-filled, crazy, disease-ridden world will pass. And so whether you're tuning in at Twitter or Periscope, at Bible Study Can, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, at any one of those places, wherever you happen to be, let's keep our hearts and our minds and our perspectives and our eyes focused on Jesus, looking forward to the day that he returns to bring us home. And if I missed sharing something in this passage that you want to draw my attention to, then jump into any one of the comment streams, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I know Periscope's comment stream ends when this live stream ends, but wherever you happen to be, jump in and leave a comment. Even the Periscope comments I end up being able to read, I just am not able to respond to. But whether you're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, any one of those places, jump in and leave a comment and let's keep this conversation going. And if I shared something in this passage or in this little morning devotional, you could say, that encouraged you and you believe it could help somebody else with this truth of remembering that the good times might not last forever and the bad times won't last forever, then I would encourage you to share this video with them. Because while we're still in this disease-ridden, sin-filled, pandemic-crazed world, let's keep connected digitally and keep our focus on eternity. So with that said, thank you for tuning in. And I'll be back tomorrow morning with another insight, this time from a different passage out of the Gospels, as we move step by step into the future, looking towards eternity. I'll see you tomorrow.